Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pursuit of Relentless podcast. You've got your host here, Alaina. And today I'm so excited to get you guys access to this guest because he is doing some incredible things. And I'm super excited to have the conversation that we're going to have today. So Paul Halme, I'm super excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Alaina. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So what I want to do is just have you kind of just tell people how you got started as an entrepreneur, like what happened to get you into it. Were you always an entrepreneur? Were you like, I got to do this? But yeah, give them a little bit of your background and what you've done so far with your business.
Okay. Yeah. So it started off, I was a kid born in a small Midwest town, grew up in a small town in South Dakota. So no ambition to be an entrepreneur, so I was going to go to school and get a job. And then I ran into a guy in college who was like, you ever seen the UFC? I'm like, oh, no, that looks pretty cool. And he's like, well, yeah, I'm going to fight in the UFC someday and do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, that's cool. And then I was ready to graduate. And he's like, yeah, I'm moving down to Dallas. I'm going to go down there and train. And I was like, well, I got my degree and I don't want to stay here. I'm going to go do something different. So I came down to Dallas and ended up getting a job as a stockbroker. Loved it. Thought I had the American dream. I had the high paying job with the house, wife, 2 kids, a dog. And I just wasn't happy. I was getting fat, stressed out, just wasn't, who I wanted to be. And then I kept seeing my friends that were entrepreneurs. I'm like, man, this kind of looks pretty cool. And I started helping them out with their businesses. And I'm like, I could do this. And then it was like one thing led to another. And then my wife was super supportive and she was like, well, maybe you should jump ship. And I'm like, it's pretty scary. We got 2 little kids and I make really good money and we have really good benefits, but she was super supportive. And then we started an MMA gym 19 years ago. So yeah, it's been wild. And then from that's evolved into writing books and consulting and helping other entrepreneurs. And then the next evolution was helping them with their money because they start making money. They don't know what to do with it. And they want to spend it all. And I'm always trying to explain to them, no, you can't do that because someday you're going to be old and you're not going to have anything. So it's been a battle.
I think that's a big misconception is that when you turn age 65, you're just like automatically retired. I'm like, that's not true. That's not how it works. Money has to be a part of the conversation. And I think that when you can open up about money and just like not be ashamed to talk about it, it's so empowering because when you meet big thinkers and like dreamers and people that are super successful in business, what do they talk about? They talk about what's next. They talk about what they're creating, what their goals are, what they're excited about, where their company's going, right? And I think that when you can open up that money conversation, it's so important because like the limiting beliefs that people have around money, I don't know, man. Like what do you see on a regular basis that's like, this is what most people are, focused on, or like, this is what they're struggling with?
Well, it's super unfortunate. And I grew up in like a middle class to, maybe lower to middle class family. And all they did, if you brought up the word money, it was negative things like money doesn't grow on trees. We don't have money like that. Money is the root of all evil. Rich people suck. And I was like, man, this is horrible. And then I started getting around people through doing jiu-jitsu and MMA. I got introduced to like doctors and lawyers and surgeons and federal agents. Like people, I'm like, y'all talk to your kids way different than my parents talk to me. It's like, and I joke around to do it. It's an unfair advantage. People have money, educate their children about money, and people that don't have money basically like shield their kids from money because they never did it themselves. And it's a limiting belief they have that they pass down generation to generation. And so I see that all the time. So I tell people, I said, everything starts with your mindset, your money mindset, listening to podcasts like this, reading books, exposing your subconscious to these things, because unless you come from money, no one's going to teach you these things. You have to go look for it. And it's so unfortunate. So that's my job, I feel like, is telling people about it and talking about money because nobody wants to do it. But all my rich friends do it with their kids.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
It's insane.
So one of the fastest growing brokers in our firm, Bernardo and Laura Infante, their kids are just like super competitive. They're like, we got to do this. If we raise all of this money, we get a new swing set at the school, and they're just like so driven and motivated to go out and like help other people and just make a difference for their school and their community. And like, they made like this little video and it was just so adorable where I'm just like watching these little kids who are like 5, just make this video about how they're going to raise all this money and thank us. And, I'm just sitting there going, wow, I want my kids to be like that.
Yeah.
I want to raise my kids around these kind of people.
It's so crazy. Like if you come into our house, like I annoy my wife's family because I have no family down here. All her family's down here because my family's all up north, but people come over our house, and if the market's open, CNBC's on. It's not an option. Don't turn the channel. It stays on. My kids watch it. My wife watches it. It's like, to me, it's like you have to be around it and teach your kids that. So my son, since he was a little kid, I've taught him about money, investing, things like that. So, he's always asking questions. I'm like, man, if I would have had this much of a head start when I was your age, and I remind him of that, I'm like, dude, it's like, yeah, I'm doing well with what I'm doing, but you're not doing anything yet. You got to go do your own. It's like, don't expect to, I'm going to die and leave you a bunch of stuff, because mom and I are going to travel a lot when we're old. There's not going to be anything left. So you better figure out this money and investing stuff.
Yeah, I told my grandpa he's got to spend every penny. Keep working towards spending every penny that you've got, man. But that's because he's well off, right? Like he can just sit there and be like, oh, I'm good. But when you're talking about people's like financial well-being, I think that there's such a sad feeling when people are like, oh, I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I want to be. I must be the only person in debt. And I'm like, dude, you don't have a clue how many people are struggling and how many people are like, oh, I'm just going to get to retirement, be comfortable. And it's like, well, you have to still save money. And if you can't live off of $200,000 a year, how do you think you're going to live off of 50,000?
Yeah.
Right. Like it doesn't make sense. Where does that compute to you? Like it's hard to have that conversation. And it's like, here's how you have to save this much money to get to retirement. And it's just like, how the heck are we going to do that? I'm like, increase cash flow or spend less money.
Yeah. And it's terrifying if you don't have that conversation, because you're going to wake up, 65 years old, and you're going to be like, hope my kids got an extra guest room because I'm broke, And unfortunately, my generation's really looking down that, I'm 47, so I'm the generation. I remember when I got my first job as a stockbroker, we had a pension, and I was like, oh my God. And they would give us the graphs and everything. And I'm like, dude, if I work here for 30 years, my pension's going to be this. I'm going to be set for life. And we're like, woohoo. And then one day we got the email. It's like, oh, we're dissolving the pension. It's gone. And we got like pennies on the dollar because it's all future money. And I was like, oh my God. So I'm like the last generation to remember what a pension is. Because before in the past, like my grandparents, they were like, oh, you get to your pension and you're set, yada, yada. And it was like, I thought I had it made. I was like 26. I'm like, man, when I get to like 50, it's going to be insane. And they were like, no, it's gone.
Yeah. It's good until it's not.
Yep. Yes.
Right. And then you're just sitting there going, what am I doing? Like in my heavy equipment operating career, I was sitting there going, everyone sells you this dream of how incredible it's going to be to work on site. And you're like securing Canada's energy future. I'm like, that's great and all. But if I'm depressed and overweight and miserable and nearly freaking die every day, that's not a healthy lifestyle. I'm going to have a heart attack. No, thank you. And so when I met this business, I was just literally like, why wouldn't I do that? And I'm like, why don't people like challenge themselves to go, maybe that's not for me. My husband loves it. He loves it. He's like, Alaina, I'm obsessed with dirt. And I'm like, cool. That's great, man. I'm glad you love it so much. I hate it. I'm not doing that. Right. So I'm just like, I'm gonna die. Like, thank God I have life insurance. But it's just having that conversation with yourself going, am I truly happy? Am I actually doing this because I want to do it? Or am I doing it because I'm forced to? And just understand that you're never forced to do anything. Right. Yes, you have to provide for your family, but there's multiple ways that you can do that. And lots of people are recruiting right now. Lots and lots and lots of people are recruiting. We are looking for good people, right? And it's so hard to find good people right now because no one wants to work. And it's just so crazy to me because I'm sitting here going, in my book, I talk about the Freedom 35 challenge. And I'm like trying to talk to you guys, right? The people who are just starting and just kind of getting off to their career, beginnings. And maybe someone's like, in their career for a couple of years and they're realizing that it's not for them, or they're like thinking about being an entrepreneur. I think it's really important to just go, hey, am I truly happy? Am I actually doing what I want to do? Is this what I want to be in 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now? Because when I was asked that question, I literally sat there and was just like, no, like get me out of there. And so when I made the Freedom 35 challenge, it's about having consistent habits that you can practice on a daily basis, like keeping an eye on your money, right? Being thrifty, like just making sure that you're like not excessively spending, just make a coffee at home instead of going and, having it out, because you save $2.50. And that $2.50 is how much to you down the road if it were to be invested, right? Like, it's crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So if we can just teach people these little things, and that's why I feel like associations are so powerful. And I know you want to talk about that a lot as well today, but I think that when you can open up that conversation and just go, hey, it's safe to talk about it. Like, you don't have to be ashamed. There's no judgment here, because guess what? The reason I'm a good financial advisor is because I messed it all up, right?
We all mess it up. I mean, and that's the thing. People listen to this are like, oh, it must be nice, to be whatever. It's like, I've messed up so many things in my entire life, and I'm still messing things up. And people are like, oh, it's going to be so hard. And it is going to be hard, but it's worth it. And then don't feel like, like, oh, I'm never going to get to that point, because no matter what level you get to, you're never where you want to finish. It's like these guys that we look up to that are doing all these successful things. They're always pushing for more, because the human mind is just kind of like, oh, okay, I need to do a little bit more. I'm not satisfied. So it's that drive that pushes you.
Big time. So how have associations changed your business?
Man, so you mean associations by like people?
Yeah, like people that you associate yourself with personally, mentorship, any personal development people that you would suggest people check out?
Everything. We had all those things. It's like people are like, why do you go to events? Why do you spend all this money? And it's like, pre-pandemic, I was going to tons of events and traveling all over the country and the world doing stuff. And it literally will change your life, because when you're in your circle of influence, you're just stuck with those people. And it's like, it's like that one saying is, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And if you have anybody in your area to spend time with, then you got to go looking for people. And for me, it was always tough, because I want to talk about money. I want to talk about the hard things nobody wants to talk about. My family doesn't want to talk to me at the holidays, because I want to talk about investing in money and life, and they want to complain about the world and everything. So I'd start going looking for things. And if you can't get close people, I tell them, start listening to podcasts like Ed Milet. Dude, it's like, he's amazing. It's like watching his meteoric growth has been nuts. All these guys, you got Eric Thomas for motivation. You got
Andy Frisella. Yeah.
You got all these guys that are just like, you see the things they're doing and you're like, oh my God, I could do some of those things. It's like, there's a guy in Dallas, Ryan Stewman, who I've known for years. And, now he's like ungodly successful, and all this, like, looks like a made up celebrity, but he's a real person. And I know him from when he didn't have the things he has. And you start thinking, you're like, man, if they did that, I could probably do something bigger than what I'm doing. And then you start seeing them grow, and then you grow, and then people start hitting you up and asking you how you did this. And you're like, oh yeah, I just did this. But mentorship, unbelievable thing. It's like, I tell people, the biggest hack in life is, following these people. If they sell something, buy it. If they have an event, go to the event, be nice, talk to them, never ask to pick their brain. Just be like, just be a legit person that's interested in growing, and you'll see growth like you can't imagine. I mean, it's like, it's insane.
Yeah. I want to highlight a little tip for everyone. So something that I like to do is I will ask them how I can add value to them. And like, hey, Ed, how can I add value to you? And he's like, share my post, or you can share my podcast, and just help me spread the word about what I'm trying to accomplish. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, all he's asking, he's not going, you need to buy my program. You need to, he's going, hey, if you want people to change and you want people to get access to my kind of content, then give them access to my content.
Oh yeah. And it makes a huge difference too, because you see these guys and you think they're untouchable. And one thing I love to do, and I tell people, is like a great hack. Another one is use Instagram stories, follow your dream. Chet Holmes talks about in The Ultimate Sales Machine, your dream 100, follow them and start, don't be like, hey, could I ask you, don't do that, but be like, if they post something, share it. If they post something cool, like send them a fire emoji. So then later on, maybe you meet Ed or somebody 5 years down the road, and you see like, hey, you look familiar. I'm like, oh yeah, I sent you stuff on Instagram. And maybe you send him a thing on Instagram, like, hey, it was really cool seeing you. He looks back at the history, and you've never asked for anything. You haven't asked to pick his brain. You're just like, man, this dude shares all my stuff. He bought my book. Okay. He's not a complete moron. It's like, this is a legit person. And you start building relationships. I've done that over the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic. Didn't have a lot to do. So I'd just go through Instagram and I'd start, following people. I'm like, there's no way I can get near this person, but I'm gonna figure out a way. And then I make it a game, and then I start supporting their stuff. And then like I had one happen the other day, and just to show you how much it works, like I was following this one person, and I always like reshare their stuff, and I send them fire emojis and everything. And I posted something about a deal that I got on that they did. I didn't tag them. I didn't do anything. And the dude replied to my story. And I'm like, holy crap. I'll tell my wife, I'm like, oh my God, so-and-so replied to my story and I didn't tag him. So it's like they see what's going on. I mean, obviously at a higher level, like Ed and Andy's level, they don't see as much, but if you're always doing stuff, they start to remember that stuff because people come and go all the time. The takers, they're always like, give me, and then they're gone. But the people are always around, sticking around, sharing stuff, learning stuff. I mean, those guys give away so much value. It's insane.
You know what I love about Ed so much? And I'm like, just go get anything Ed Milet. I'm reading The Power of One More book right now. And it is seriously like the best book I've ever read because he's just giving you tangibles. Here's how I think. Here's what I would suggest. Here's the mindsets. And he highlights it in the book. And I'm like, thank you. Right. It's so great. But you know what I love about him? I sent him a little bit of my story and how he's changed my life. And he said, Alaina, I hope you don't take offense to this, but right now is not the time for me to be on the podcast. And I was like, dude, I don't care. Like, that's totally fine. Like, I'm just throwing it out there because if I don't ask, I'm never going to land a podcast interview with you. Right. Exactly. So if I put it out there and go, hey, guess what happened a week after I had that conversation with him? He's like, I hope you don't take offense to this. And I was like, not a chance I would take offense to that. Like, you're the reason that I am the person that I am. Right. And you've challenged me so much. And I think that that's another key that we should talk about is being challenged because it really does make a huge difference when you're just like chasing something. So literally a week after that conversation, I got a phone call from his person who's booking his TV show. And I got an interview on his TV show. But it was like a pre-interview and they're like, we'll call you type thing. But I'm like, even that was an opportunity for me to share my story with his team. Right. And I was like, thank you. So what I did is I sent him a personal message and I said, hey man, I know you're probably not even going to get this. You don't even know your team called me. But he does because he knows everything that's happening in his businesses. And it's just like, hey, I really appreciate that opportunity. And he just sent me like I see you type thing. Yeah. I'm like,
and that's the thing. Just be seen like that. Take those little chances, take those little risks. And then when the opportunity comes, jump on them, and thank people for the opportunity. Because like you said, he interacts with God knows how many people, but he's going to remember those things because they have meetings. He might not see all the stuff, but they're talking in meetings. He's like, oh, I keep hearing that name. Okay, this person must be doing something.
Yeah.
It's crazy how it works.
Times too. And it's so funny because like one thing that you would never know about me is that I'm over 6 feet tall. And so Ed's not. And I'm just like, I got to go up and the picture's actually right here. You'll see it down there in the corner. That's me and my husband and Ed Milet. Right. And I look at that all the time and I just go, man, if I can do it, he can. Like, if he can do it, I can do it. If he can do it, I can do it. And because we're in the same business. So I look at that and I'm just like, hey, we have equal opportunity. Right. If I can learn what Ed has done, I can learn, like you were saying earlier, study them. I have not missed one podcast. You know what I mean? Like every single podcast, because he always interviews new people. He always talks to people about stuff that is important, like your heart health and anti-aging and running a successful business model. And like, oh man, I'm just like, thank you. Thank you for adding so much value. And I know that one day I will earn that interview because he's trained me to be good at this. Right. I listen to how he asks questions. I listen to, the kind of conversations that he's having. And I try and do my best to not duplicate him, but like put my own spin on things and just go, hey, this is how I've become successful in business. And I'm nowhere near his level of success yet, but I know that I have equal opportunity. So I can create with it what I want. Right. And so can you. It's just, how much are you willing to study? How much are you willing to implement the things that you're learning into your business?
100%. Yeah, it's all right out there for us. It's just people taking that initiative to read the book, to listen to the podcast, to send the message on Instagram, doing those little things. All those things accumulate and you start creating habits. And then you just keep doing the same things over and over again. And it becomes routine. And then you're out working everybody all of a sudden.
Yeah. That's so good. I'm like, I'm just like on fire right now. I got some serious energy. It's awesome. So I want to just touch on one more thing. We were talking a little bit about challenges earlier, and I want to know how you've seen people's automatic stress responses change through personal development, through having a proper fitness routine, through taking care of their health. Like, how do people change? How do people adapt? How do they feel after actually going through the process with you, for example?
It's pretty wild. I get to see both sides of it because I still own a gym. So I'm helping regular people all the time. But then my bigger business is consulting. So I'm consulting with gym owners and I see the same thing with them. For like the average person just getting in shape, and you see them just change completely because they become more confident. When they become more confident and they have more energy, what happens? They do better at work, they get a raise, they get promoted, or they own their own business and they do something to challenge themselves, and then when you go to the gym owner side of it, the guys that I consult for, I can always tell if they're getting out of shape and they're getting a little bit lazier. I'm like, dude, you need to really take care of your personal stuff because you're slacking, and I can see it in what you're doing. And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. I got to get back on that. Because when you start becoming successful, people like slack a little bit on the fitness side. That's why I love to follow guys like Ed and Andy and Ryan, all these guys that are all about, hey, you got to get your workout in because that's where everything starts. Because it does, because everybody you get in the world, people do start making money, then they're all dying because they're not taking care of themselves. So it's like, you got to put the work in. Yes, you could still get hit by the bus and anything could happen, but putting the odds in your favor is a no-brainer to me. And then the better quality of life, because the coolest part is we're living longer and longer every year. So the more money you have and then you get older, you get to enjoy retirement more and go do things versus being like, I see guys my age now where I'm like, bro, if you make it to 60, you're not going to be able to walk. You're probably going to be in a wheelchair with fake knees and, a triple bypass, because, and it's like, and it just comes down to like making those better decisions and those better habits. But I love getting to see it because seeing people change is so rewarding.
I agree. It's the number one reason I do what I do. Because when you can help people develop their mindset with the podcast and my financial business and my book, like all of them are all about contribution. It's about sharing how I've done it, which may work for some people and may not work for other people. Right. And I understand that. It's if I can change one life, if I can help one person, and I know I have because a lot of people have reached out to me already and they've been like, you're amazing. And I'm like, I don't know what I did, but okay, cool. It's like, when you find that confidence, like you were saying, that confidence in yourself, when you're just like, hey, it doesn't matter if I mess things up. What matters is I'm going out there today and I'm doing everything that I can to make a difference in the world, or to have a better life, or to be the best wife, or to, be a successful business owner, whatever it is for you. And I think it's really important to understand that everyone's different. And you're not going to learn the same from other people, because I might love Ed Milet, and Ed Milet's like my guru, but he's not. He'd be like, no, man, I'm a regular human. Like, I'm just going to try and share everything that I can with you, so that you can be successful too, because that's the ripple effect of what he's chosen to do with his life. And I love that. And I think when you go out and you try and help one person, you try and help them impact their life or their mindset or the way that they look at the world, it's so powerful. And you never know the power of one conversation until you have it. Right. Oh,
yeah. And it's like you said, too. So just, if you change the way you think about stuff, people are like, oh, I don't want to do sales and money's all this mindset stuff. Don't think about sales. You're not selling anything. You're helping people. It's like, people are like, oh, I don't want to have in my industry, people are always like, oh, you shouldn't teach martial arts and make money. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of in my life. It's like, well, it should be blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no. It's like, well, people are like, oh, I want to be salesy. I'm like, I'm not salesy. Somebody comes into my school, and the first thing I'll ask them is, is like, what brought you in here? And they're like, they'll tell me like, oh, and I'm overweight, or I don't have a lot of confidence. And then I go even deeper with them. I'm like, well, why is that important? Why is that important to you? What does that mean to you? And then they'll tell you, they'll be like, well, I was playing with my kid and I got really, really tired. And I started thinking about, oh my God, am I going to see my kids grow up and my grandkids? And I'm like, well, if you don't do something, probably not, the odds aren't in your favor. And I'll be point blank with them, but I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm trying to give them what they need. And it's like, you're here for a reason. You're looking for something. I have it. And it's probably the same thing with you. People come in and they're like, they need something. And you're just like, hey, here's what you need. Here's what we've got. Which one works better for you? And if people think about that, just change the conversation to helping people, then you'll have everything you ever wanted. You'll make all the money you want. You'll have all the sales because you're not selling. You're just helping people.
Yeah, that's what business is. It is solving somebody's problem. Every business that ever existed is there to solve someone's problem. And if you run a business that doesn't solve a problem, you're not in business. You have to be solving some sort of a problem, because that's why people go to you. That's why you're the go-to guy, because you are the best in what you do, for instance. And I don't know. I think it's important for people to understand that they don't have to stay where they feel stuck. They don't have to, be in this job that they hate, because there's so much opportunity out there. Do I suggest just going out and starting a business willy-nilly? No, no. Like, don't do it. Do your research, learn, study, adapt, grow, put in the time, put in the effort, put in the work. But the more work that you put into your business, the better you become. So like this morning, for instance, yesterday I slept until 8:00. Okay. I was like so tired, came back from BC, drove for 2 days straight, did a whole bunch of stuff. It was crazy. Anyways. So I was like, fuck it, I'm sleeping in. So yesterday, but I felt out of place. I almost gave myself anxiety because I was out of my routine. And so this morning I got up at 5:30 and it was a little earlier than that, but got up around 5. And then I went to yoga for a 6 a.m. class. I came home, I walked my dog, I did an appointment, I got on training, I did another appointment, and now I'm recording this podcast. And I'm like, dude, I feel incredible, because I know that I did the things that are going to build that confidence within me, right? Taking care of my health, taking care of my body, doing a little meditation. And now I'm going to go read my book and sit out in the sun and re-energize, have some water.
Yeah. Those habits make everything though. And people are like, well, where do you start? It's like, start with one habit and then add another one, add another one. Another good book, anybody listening to Atomic Habits, I'm sure you've probably read that one too.
Yes, James Clear.
Yeah, it's like you read the book and you're like, this is so simple. Why does nobody teach you these things? It's like, just start with one habit that's small and just start stacking them. And then, like you said, I'm the same way as you are. If I'm feeling burned out and I'm like, oh, I need to sleep in or take a break, then I wake up and I feel guilty. Like, oh my God, I broke my routine. It's like, oh shoot. Because you become a high performer, you want to get these things done because it pushes the needle and it's going to help your family, it's going to help your clients and your friends and you. And when you get out of your routine, you start freaking out, kind of like, oh my God, I got to get caught up on my routine. And it's awesome once you get in that habit. But yeah, just read that book, start building habits. Anybody listen to this, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, big time. And it's so important to just focus on taking care of yourself, because the better you are today, the better you can impact people's lives, and you are not guaranteed tomorrow. Right. And this is like, I have this conversation with myself all the time when I have that imposter syndrome, when I'm like, what am I doing? I'm crazy. Like, what do you mean you run a friggin' podcast and you wrote a book and you did all this stuff? And people are like, you're so amazing. And I'm like, I'm just normal, just doing my job, But I think about how far I've come in the last 5 years. And I think about the life that I've created and how much more mental toughness I've got in comparison to 5 years from now, 5 years ago. But this is the first podcast that I've recorded since I had my second miscarriage. And it's literally nothing like the first time. I didn't get the depression. I didn't really struggle all that much. I was kind of just like, that sucks, but move on, right? You're not sitting there. And I was like, okay, well, instead of me doing the automatic stress responses of going to the candy and the ice cream and the struggle, of the food addiction and all that kind of stuff, I went to 75 hard instead. Right? I'm getting my mind clear. I'm getting sharp on what I'm doing. I'm focusing my energy on myself and my best self. And I'm like, hey, if I can drink a gallon of water every day, am I going to be closer to my goal or further away from my goal? Right? Obviously, I'm going to be closer to my goal because I'm hydrating. I'm taking care of my body and my mind. And it's just when you feel that feeling of what your best self feels like, holy cow, you just sit there and you go, why do I self-sabotage? Why do you self-sabotage? And it's because of the beliefs that you have about yourself. If you believe that you deserve that thing, that's what's going to happen, right? If you believe that you can create this incredible life for yourself, guess what's going to happen? You're going to create an incredible life for yourself. And
you have to believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we don't believe it, it's like, then like I said, that depression kicks in. We're all faced with those challenges, life-altering events happen. And it's like, yes, you have to learn to deal with everything and it sucks and everything. But the stronger you are mentally, you're like, okay, you know what? This bad thing happened to me and bad things happen to people. But you know what? I got tomorrow's a new day. I'm going to work on me. I'm just going to keep getting better. And eventually I'm going to get all the things that I want. And learning to deal with those setbacks is so hard, but such an important part of growth.
Yes, big time. And you feel in those moments when you do have a trauma or a triumph, right? When you're just overcoming something where you have that good job. Like you can pat yourself on the back and that you did good in that situation where you didn't lose it. You didn't freak out. You were level-headed, you are growing, and that's your own personal leadership taking over, just going, hey, you are at the place where you actually believe that you deserve to win. And that's when you start creating this incredible life for yourself where it's just like, wow, look what I've created, right? It's so cool.
So cool.
So I want people to get more access to you. And then I'm going to close up with one final question. So tell us where people can find you in particular, and then let us know what you wish you learned earlier in your career.
All right. Best places to find me is my website, my name, PaulHalme.com. Usually update some blogs and kind of what's going on there. And then my favorite place is Instagram. It's so much happier than Facebook. And like I said, I use it as one of my secret weapons is networking on there. Is I'm on there all the time. So you can hit me up on Instagram .com/PAUL_HALME, because apparently there's another Paul Halme in this world, which is very strange, but whatever. So it's PAUL_HALME. And that's my favorite spot. But, follow along. I give away lots of interesting tips and stuff like that. So it's always fun.
Love it.
And you said, so what was something that
that you wish you learned earlier? So yeah, go ahead.
No, for me, patience, that's the hardest thing is because when I was younger, I was so driven, and wanted to go. And that's part of the game and everything, but I would not enjoy things as much as I should have. And I wish I would have had more patience. And then we had my daughter. My daughter's autistic. So I had to learn patience because she started breaking stuff and you can't communicate. And it's like, it was the hardest thing in my life that I went through, because you have this child that's, 7 or 8 years old with the mind of a 1-year-old, and you can't communicate with them and they're breaking stuff. And you're like, oh, well, I can't. Do I spank the kid? I don't know what to do. It's like, and I had to learn, you know what? I just have to be patient, work with her and do stuff. And now it's like, when people meet me, they're like, man, you're really patient. Like flights get delayed. I'm like, meh, stuff, bad things happen. I'm kind of like, meh, whatever. It's like, I've been through the worst with my daughter. So, and I always say, it's like we were talking about earlier, when bad things happen, some people are like, oh, it must be hard. And I'm like, yeah, it was hard, but now it's like the greatest gift ever. Cause she gets a little bit better every year, but I'm just so much more patient. I wish I'd been a little bit more patient when I was younger, because when you're in a hurry, sometimes you make mistakes where if you learn to sit back a little bit, take a couple deep breaths, everybody's listening to probably sent that text message where you're like, yeah, shouldn't have sent that one. Or you sent that email and you're like, oh, it should have waited 24 hours. It's like, so now I'm like, I really try to be patient with stuff where it's like, I still get mad and, people make me angry, but it's like, I don't react. I try not to react. I'm like, you know what, whatever. And if I have to react, it's like, it's going to be very thought out 24 hours later, or if something's heated, it's like, it's like, hey, let's talk on the phone. Cause messaging and stuff like that, it could come off so crazy, but yeah, I would say patience. I wish I'd have learned a little bit younger, but it's been a good experience.
Oh, that's so true. I love that. And I think that patience is literally the number one thing that people need to work with, because when you are short tempered and you feel that anger coming up, or you're like, I'm gonna bite this person's head off right now, or you being a black belt, I'm gonna just rip this guy's head off. Right. But when you're focused on how can I take it down a notch and just go, oh, it's okay. They feel your energy too.
Yep. Oh yeah. It just escalates.
So if you're in a reactive state where you're just like, then it's not as effective if you're going, okay, how can we look at this differently? How can I see their perspective? How can I, keep this calm and still get my point across? I think that just having that patience and that understanding that the problem is resolvable, everything is figure outable.
Everything is.
One of my lovely coaches says, but yeah, it's just being able to go in and go, okay, this is where we're going. This is what we need to try and accomplish. And having the mindset that everything's going to happen right away and it's all going to be hunky dory it's not a thing, right? No. Business takes time to build, and people are like, oh, how did you get there? Well, 6 years, and I know there's 26 more years to come, and it's like the constant battle. But when you realize that you just have to live today at your best and just focus on today and what you're doing today to get to your goals, then you'll start to believe those things about yourself, that you deserve to be fit. You deserve to be healthy. You deserve to be wealthy. You deserve to be free, right?
Yeah. We all deserve all those things. Everybody deserves all those things. But unfortunately, people people get limiting beliefs like, oh, I can't ever do that. And it's like, well, why not? Why can't you do that? There's no reason you can't. It's just figuring out the plan and doing it.
Exactly. So anyways, that's our time for today. So I'm super grateful again that you were able to be on the show today. I know
it's been
got a ton of value out of that conversation, and I know you guys did. So make sure that you share the show with some friends if you think that they would get a bunch of value out of the content. And I know that there's a lot of people here that are just sitting there going, I'm going to think about that a lot more today, and just be conscious of it. So have some fun, get access to Paul. I'll post everything in the show notes for you guys so that you can go and check out his stuff, get his book, all of that good stuff. So thank you so much again. And that is Pursuit of Relentless signing out.